Folks, 2XKO has the potential to bring a lot of new people into fighting games, but along with this comes a certain amount of confusion because in the fighting game community, we have a lot of very strange terminology and slang that we use for different things that all the League of Legends players are kind of finding out, wait, like, what does this mean? Like, what in the world is a happy birthday? And it turns out in fighting games, a happy birthday is when you're doing a combo that hits both of the enemy characters at once. I guess it's a happy birthday because it's like they gave you a gift. The extra character is just like a bonus gift. This term originated from way back in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And in that game, since you had 3 characters on a team, you could even do the legendary Merry Christmas, where you're hitting all 3. But do you think in 2XKO, should we call it a 2XKO if you kill both characters? Is that like the famous titular double KO? I don't know. Another weird one in fighting games is a Rekka. What exactly is a Rekka? So this one comes from Fei Long's special move, Rekka Ken, way back in Street Fighter 2, shortened to just Rekka. And this is basically a 3-part special move. So you can do 1 part, you can do 2, or you can do 3. So you basically have the choice of how many of these you want to do. So we still use that for moves like Alawi. Her forward S1, you can do 1, you can do 2, or you can do all 3. And it works very similarly to the Rekka Ken from Street Fighter 2. There's a lot of moves like this across fighting games. You could maybe also say that Ari, she can do S1, S1, S1. But this one's a little bit weird for a Rekka, considering it like starts with a projectile and she can like air dash cancel the second hit. So this one is like pretty crazy for a Rekka, but I guess you could call that one a Rekka as well. There's also all kinds of acronyms in fighting games: DHC, OTG, DP. So DHC is delayed hyper combo, which is a very old school name. Comes from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's basically when you do a super and then you do your next character's super. And this is just called Double Down in 2XKO, but DHC is the old school name for it that traces back to Marvel vs. Capcom. OTG refers to hitting the opponent on the ground, when the opponent is on the ground, like that. So in 2XKO, generally you can only get 1 hit in an OTG situation. Oftentimes you can OTG with a super. Ari can OTG with her orb super like this. So yeah, we would call that an OTG. And then DP is short for Dragon Punch. This is another one that comes all the way back to Street Fighter 2. The Dragon Punch is an invincible move that is also used as an anti-air. So far, the only DP in 2XKO is Darius with his down S2. And it's not even actually invincible, it's just armored. So it'll absorb attacks, but it will lose to throws and armor breakers. But people are still calling this a DP just because it goes through everything. That's kind of the point of a DP. It'll just go through any of the enemy's attacks and get you out of a bad situation. Okay, next up, it's time for a little bit of weeb stuff, okay? You know, fighting games are heavily influenced by Japan because a lot of fighting games come from Japan. A lot of the best fighting game players come from Japan. So we use a lot of Japanese terms, one of which is going to be okizeme. What does okizeme mean? So literally, okizeme just basically means like waking up offense. So like when the opponent is waking up, you know, what kind of mix-ups and tricks are you going to apply to them as they're getting up? This is a really, really essential concept in fighting games. So Echo is really known for being kind of the king of okizeme in this game. All of his combos, when he leads into a knockdown, he can do some really tricky stuff where you don't know which side to block on, you don't know where he's going to end up as you're getting up. Yasuo as well, when he gets a knockdown, he can go for all kinds of okizeme like this to go to the other side. So yeah, anytime you get a knockdown and you're going for, you know, pressure or mix-up or whatever as the opponent is getting up off the ground, we call that okizeme. Another one you might hear is abare. Abare can mean like to act violently or like to be crazy, to do stuff that's like very aggressive. And in fighting games, we basically mean to press buttons aggressively or to press buttons in a defensive situation or kind of to mash, you might say. For example, normally pressing buttons when you're blocking is a very bad idea, right? Like if you block an attack and you're just mashing buttons, you are really opening yourself up to getting hit. So many people will abuse the fact that it's wrong to press buttons on defense and just repeatedly try to reset their pressure and do stuff like this, which is kind of fake because there's gaps. But they know that the opponent is going to be scared to press buttons because that's generally a frowned upon thing to do in fighting games, is to press on defense because it's so dangerous. And so in this kind of situation, you can steal your turn back by pressing buttons defensively, and someone might see this and say, oh, nice abare. You wildly pressed buttons in a disadvantageous situation, but it was the right call and it got you out of it. So we call that a bare. Okay, so we've talked about some Japanese expressions. Let's talk about some other kind of regional things here. Like, have you heard of the Cali burst? The California burst refers to when you burst when you're probably going to die anyway, right? So imagine my Echo is dead, I'm on my last character, and I just burst with a pixel left with Yatsuo, you know? I could have saved that burst for next round. The burst carries over, but instead, I'm probably just going to die anyway and start the next round with no burst. So you might also call this the hero burst, when you burst with almost no HP left, just on the hope and a prayer that you can make an impossible comeback. But yeah, we generally call that a Cali burst. Another type of burst, although this one is less common, is the Canada burst. That is when you burst when you're way up in the Great White North, essentially. You're way up at the top of the screen, and you burst, and this is a very bad thing to do because you will oftentimes get punished for it. So I guess because you're so far up north when you burst, we call that the Canada burst. All right, it's only fair that I catch a little bit of flack as well. You know, I'm from Chicago, and here we have the Chicago punish, which is when you block something that's super punishable, and you punish with a throw, you know? Because if you block like a huge dragon punch or a super or something, you should really get like a massive damage combo and just kill the opponent. But sometimes you just panic. And that's when you get the Chicago punish, okay? So try to avoid that if you can. Okay, and to close things out, I'm going to talk about the most inscrutable word in fighting game slang, which is fuzzy, okay? So fuzzy has a couple different meanings. The first one is essentially to do something with delayed timing to try to sort of cover two different options at once. So probably the most common example in 2XKO is what's called a fuzzy jump, which basically means I'm going to block for a little bit, and then I'm going to do a slightly delayed jump. And why this is useful is because the opponent's going to knock me down, and I'm going to, you know, automatically block on wake up since he attacked me as I'm getting up. But if he decided instead to go for a command throw, I'm going to jump a little bit late and get out of the command throw. So we call that fuzzy jump. It's kind of a method to avoid mix-ups by covering multiple options depending on what the opponent does. And the second use is what we call fuzzy overheads. So you can see normally I cannot hit the opponent with an instant butt splash on the way up, right? This should be what's called an instant overhead, hitting the opponent overhead on the way up, but I can't do it if he's crouching. But if I first make him block an extremely late jumping attack, his character model actually doesn't have time to crouch. So this is actually a true mix-up. It's either overhead into low, or it is overhead into overhead. You can see this is very hard to do, but it is possible. So we call that a fuzzy overhead. I guess maybe the idea is that these are both situations where you're kind of in two spots at once, right? You're either blocking or jumping at the same time, but in this situation, you're standing and crouching at the same time, essentially. So that is the idea of a fuzzy overhead. This Braum one is the only one I've seen in this game, but they might exist for other characters as well. But yeah, if you ever hear someone asking, you know, are there any good fuzzy setups in this game? That's what they're talking about, because this is a really powerful mix-up. It's a pure 50-50, either overhead into low or overhead into overhead. As you can see, I'm really bad at doing it, but yes, it is real. It does exist in this game as well. So guys, those are about all the fighting game terms I have for you guys today. If there's any other ones that you've heard that are very confusing to you, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see if I can respond to them or maybe even make another video about it. But hopefully you found the video interesting and or entertaining. It would really help me out if you could leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. I got lots more fighting game content coming out for 2XKO and for lots of other games as well. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everybody.